Hi everyone and welcome to the Expert Classroom. My name's Miss Katie. I'm so excited today as this video is all about something I love to do, writing stories and drawing pictures. Today we're going to learn how to create a narrative, that's just a fancy word for story, and how we can use describing words to make our writing really interesting. Just like making a cake, a good story has some important ingredients that need to be included to make it fun to read. But the most exciting part of today's video is that we're going to meet a real-life author and illustrator. We're going to be chatting with Matt Stanton, author of books like Funny Kid, Fart Monster and Pea and Nut, all about where he gets his ideas for his stories and how he learned to become such an amazing drawer. A narrative is another word for a story. It's made up of things that happen or events and can be either real or made up in your imagination. Narratives are designed to tell stories, but they're not just picture books and novels. They can also be poems, diaries, comic strips, short stories, biographies, that's writing about someone else's life, and many more. They're written to make the reader feel something. Think of the last book you read. How did it make you feel? Happy? Scared? Excited? Interested? But it's important to remember that when writing a narrative, there are a few key ingredients you need to use to make sure your reader doesn't want to put your story down. So what is the structure of a narrative and what does each part involve? Step 1, the introduction. Here you'll introduce your main character and any other important characters, as well as the setting of the story, like the time and place that the story happens. Step 2, create a problem. This problem should be one that the main character or characters need to solve, and it will trigger more events in the story. Step 3 is the series of events which tells us what happens next. Step 4, the resolution. This is the point in the story where the problem is solved and the series of events are wrapped up. And step 5 is the conclusion or the ending. In this section, you might like to leave your reader with a moral to your story, something they can learn from, or even with a happily ever after. So we've learned that narratives are made up of 5 steps. Now it's time to learn about how we can create narratives that people want to read. Over 1 million children have read Matt Stanton's books. So what's the trick to writing stories that keep people coming back for more? A great place to start is by using creative writing techniques. A technique is like a mini plan, and there are lots of different techniques that you can use. Try including things like illustration, that means to draw pictures, and humour, or making people laugh, to really make your readers want to pick up your story again and again, or read something new that you've written. Here are 5 top tips for writing creating stories that connect. Tip 1. Know your readers. When you sit down to write your story, think about who you are writing it for. You might start with an age group or even a specific person, like someone in your family, a friend, or your teacher. When you can picture that person in your mind, think about what kinds of things they like and what kind of story they might want to read, and start there. Tip 2, get descriptive. Use creative writing techniques such as verbs, doing words, adverbs, how they are doing the thing, and adjectives, describing words, to bring your writing to life. This helps make your sentences as interesting as possible and can help your reader build up a picture of your story in their mind. If you get stuck for words, do a brainstorm or look in a thesaurus to give you some new and exciting words. Tip 3, stick to the structure. Don't forget that any narrative is made up of the 5 steps we spoke about earlier. Keep to this plan to make sure your story flows smoothly for the reader. Tip 4, paint the picture. Go beyond adjectives and use things like similes, brave as a lion, and metaphors, it's raining cats and dogs, to create a clear picture in your readers' minds. By doing this, you'll be able to help your audience connect with the place and people in your story. Tip 5, use illustration, that means drawings, if you really want to bring your story and characters to life. Try drawing important moments in the story and including them next to the words to help your readers see what you imagine your story to look like. An author who is incredible at engaging his audience is Matt Stanton. He's the author behind loads of great books like the Funny Kid series, books that drive kids crazy, There is a Monster, Pea and Nut, Fart Monster, and so many more. In total, he's published 28 books that have brought laughter to Australian children since 2002. He's known for filling his books with humour and creating stories that are designed to surprise and delight. Hi Matt, how are you going?
Hi Katie, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Really good, thank you. So I've got a few questions for you. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, we're going to start with an easy one. What was the first story you ever wrote?
The first story I ever wrote, I wrote in kindergarten, and I couldn't actually write in kindergarten, so I drew a picture, and I did scribbles at the top, and I took it to my teacher, and my teacher said, "This is so rude," and she threw it in the bin.
Oh my goodness, but at least it's a good way to start.
Absolutely, it made my friend laugh a lot.
So what inspired you to be a children's author?
When I was 11, I wrote a short story for class, and my teacher got me up in front of the entire school assembly to read it. And I was terrified of doing that because I was very nervous, but I did it. And as I did, lots of kids in my class and kids that I didn't know started to really laugh at my story. And I had this moment of thinking, wow, isn't it incredible what you can do with your imagination? That you can use your imagination to make your friends laugh. And I kind of caught the bug from it.
That was really brave.
Yeah, I was very nervous and I was very annoyed at my teacher at the time. But in hindsight, I'm very glad she made me do it.
Well, that's awesome. Now, you've written a lot of books with a lot of different characters. What character do you relate to the most and why?
The character I relate to the most is probably Max from Funny Kid. So my Funny Kid series, they're chapter books. There's 7 of them. And Max is a character that he doesn't have that same moment that I just talked about, but he does have an experience where he realizes that he can use his imagination to make people laugh. And when he realizes that his imagination is that powerful, he kind of gets a bit excited and his adventures begin.
And what advice have you got to people that are writing stories and want to create believable characters?
If you want to create believable characters, I would suggest you start with your own experience and you start with things that you really know about. But then you exaggerate them because you want them to be believable, but you also want them to be interesting. So start with something that is true, like I did, for example, but exaggerate it into something that's just a little bit beyond what might normally be.
Do you ever suffer from writer's block, and how do you deal with it?
I do sometimes suffer from writer's block. Because I am an author and an illustrator, what that means that I can do is jump from one thing to the other. And I encourage kids to do the same, because lots of kids who might find writing difficult or just find it difficult on a particular day find drawing really fun. And so one of the things that I use when I come up against writer's block is that I switch between one and the other. So if I'm a bit stumped with my writing, I might go and draw my story for a while. And it's amazing what ideas can come and what solutions can come to the problems when you approach a story from another angle.
That's a great idea. It's really good to kind of switch up that thinking style.
Absolutely. It's really interesting how it uses a slightly different part of your creative brain.
So what kind of style of writing do you tend to use?
All of my books at the moment are humorous, or at least I want them to be funny. So my style, I guess, is not too serious, quite playful, and I really enjoy writing dialogue. I really enjoy writing characters talking back and forth to each other really fast. I find that really, really fun. It's like I'm just hearing a conversation and I get to write it.
So what does that do for a story when a writer uses that conversation technique?
It can make a story really come to life. And it can also make a story feel like it reads really quickly. Because if you've got a lot of chatter going on backwards and forwards between characters, then the story feels really alive, it feels really dynamic. But we're also learning things about the characters, whether we realize it or not. As the reader, we're picking things up, and there's a great opportunity as the writer to put really interesting things about your character